1. During 8th and ninth grade, I was the target of a pretty big group of bullies. They made my life hell both inside and outside school, as we lived in a small community. It all started when I came to a local party with a bag of beer. The soon-to-be bully frontman came up to me, caught me off guard with a brass knuckle punch right in the solar plexus, robbed me of my bag, dragged me away, and made me kiss his feet before letting me leave. After that, the word got around quick that I was a bitch that everyone could mess with, and they did. Entering school in the mornings and leaving in the afternoons were my most vulnerable times. They often grouped up waiting to catch me entering or leaving. I was real stealthy and an explosive runner, so they didn't catch me often, but they never missed a chance to try. Sometimes they caught me off guard. One time, when my mom was working the night shift and I had friends over, they invaded my apartment by climbing up the balcony and peeing all over it and kicking in the front door. They never got inside, but they trashed it completely. We actually went to court for this. I started going to the gym frequently and made good progress for a couple of months until one day, they all showed up and jumped me inside of the gym. I never went back after that. My secret spot was revealed and my progress was over. I lived in constant fear during these years, unable to move outside without keeping all my peripherals on point. I developed tactics, like being late for school every day and staying in the classroom of the last class, as long as you could avoid running into them in the cafeteria or entrance. I still remember the relief I felt after getting into the safe zone on Friday afternoons, knowing I could relax during the weekend. And I remember the aching anxiety every Sunday evening, knowing I had a full week of dodging abuse ahead of me. I was a martial arts fanatic, and when a Thai boxing club opened up in my town, I was the first one there. I showed up at every class and loved every second of it. I trained for about a year until one day the key bullying group came inside. The word must have gotten around, and I thought this was the last time I'd be able to train. I never realized how strong I'd become during that year because I was still living in constant fear. But when they all hit the floor during warm-up out of exhaustion, I was baffled. I wasn't even sweaty yet. When it came time for sparring, I got paired up with one of them. He didn't stand a chance. He couldn't protect himself at all, and the few punches he threw were complete misses. I clunked him so many times I lost count during the 2 two-minute rounds. I didn't hit hard. I still followed the rules and let him decide the pace and power. They all left mid-class after the sparring. The rest of that class I was anxious because I knew they would be waiting outside to get me like always. But to my surprise, they weren't there. The next time I ran into them, they completely ignored me. I was still afraid and ready to run, but they acted like I wasn't even there. It took a while to accept this, and I stayed ready when they were around for months after that. It's crazy to think it only took a couple of minutes to end years of abuse. 2. High school friend and I were just reminiscing about this, and since my train is delayed, I thought I'd share. Back in school, him and I were assigned to work on a geography project about plate tectonics. Friend hated geography and had a sour relationship with the teacher. I, on the other hand, was quite good at the subject and even liked it. I suppose that's why Friend chose me as his project partner. After a few days, I noticed he hadn't done any work on the project whatsoever. When I confronted him, he basically said, "Look, I have no intention of doing anything for this project. Please just let me get a good grade. I would only hold your grade back otherwise anyway." Of course, I was annoyed, and I informed him this plan wouldn't work. I have always been quite good at writing, at least in our native language, and I had a very distinctive writing style even as a teen. So if I did everything myself, the teacher would notice. Friend did not take this warning seriously and basically brushed me off to go do the entire project myself. This is where the revenge started. I looked ahead in the school agenda and noticed that we had a big economics project coming up, at least 3 times bigger and more important than the geography one. I despised economics and sucked so hard at it, not least because it involved very little writing. Friend, however, excelled at it. Always the entrepreneurial type, economics was his best subject by far. We were part of an 8-person friend group. though friend was my best friend, so I informed the other 6 of my plans and convinced him to form pairs so that friend would basically be stuck with me. The day we got the economics assignment, friend seemed a little annoyed to have someone as incapable at economics as me as his partner. A few hours later, it was time for geography class. I had turned in our project the weekend before. As I predicted, the teacher called me out of the classroom to discuss the project. Friend seemed terrified. Turns out we'd gotten 8.5 out of 10. Not bad for one person doing a 2-person job. The teacher voiced his suspicions that I had done all the work, because he recognized my writing style. He gave me the opportunity to rat friend out and leave him with 1 out of 10. I looked my teacher dead in the eyes and said, "You've got it all wrong, sir. Friend was a huge help throughout the entire writing. We just agreed that I would put everything on paper to keep the writing consistent. You know I can be a bit of a control freak when it comes to language." The teacher then called friend over and asked him if what I said was true. Friend seemed both surprised and remorseful, but he backed up my story, and so we both got a high grade. After class, he literally hugged me and thanked me profusely for being such an awesome friend. I wasn't mad anymore, but I wasn't about to let him get away with it either. So I said to him, "Easy there, bro. You royally screwed me over with this. The least you could do is repay me to make sure we both at least get an 8.5 out of 10 on that economics project. Because just in case you hadn't picked up on it yet, I have zero intention of doing anything for that assignment. I'll leave it in your capable hands. I would only hold you back anyway." Friend looked at me for a second and then started laughing. He apologized for his behavior and did the entire economics project, which was so much more work, while I just sat at home living my best teen life. And he delivered. He got us a perfect 10 out of 10, which actually elevated my score to a passing grade. There's not really a villain in this story if you ask me, but some lessons were learned either way. We had a great friendship, and I'm glad we have situations like these to laugh about now. 3. This all started about 18 years ago when I was 13. At the grade school I attended, we had just got a new principal. This guy did not like me and my other 2 friends, but me especially. I had ADHD and was medicated for it, but that only made me focus on whatever I chose to focus on, and that was always drawing. Every notebook I had, every subject was filled with doodles. This never affected my grades terribly. I was an above-average B and C+ student, and there were subjects like history and science that I loved and always paid attention in and received A's. One day, during one of my not-doodle sessions in math class, my teacher got annoyed I wasn't paying close attention and wrote me up for drawing in class. Classic pink slip home to my parents. This did not sit well with me, as I had started to enter my rebellious teen phase, and I drew all over that pink slip. Every inch that didn't have text or my parents' signature was covered front and back with doodles. When I handed it back in the next day, my teacher looked annoyed by my smug smile and my total lack of care toward authority. He just calmly put the pink slip in his desk and went on with class and continued to doodle. Fast forward a couple of days and the new principal stops me in the hall and starts reprimanding me about drawing on the pink slip and threatened to call my parents over it and give detention. I told him, you see their signature, they have obviously seen it, and that I didn't care if I got detention because I would not stop drawing. He gets mad, gives me detention. This angers my mother, who believes this whole situation was blown out of proportion. This was not the only time we butted heads. From 7th to 8th grade, I was constantly in his office, never for serious things. Always stuff like being loud at lunch, not paying attention, or silly petty things. At the beginning of the 2nd semester, we all started applying to the high school we wanted to go to. This was private school, and the high school that everyone in the school went to was a private school. So we needed either a recommendation from the school administrators, or you had to be interviewed to get in. Well, the principal refused to write a letter of recommendation for me or my 2 friends, and we had to interview to get into the high school we wanted to go to. We were all able to get in from our interview, but this planted the seed of resentment in my mother, and she never forgets anyone who messes with her or her children. Now for the revenge. Fast forward 4 years, I graduate from the high school. My mother had joined the administration board for the high school while I attended, and had decision-making powers when it came to hiring at the school. Even after I graduated, she maintained her position on the board because she also was an alumni of the high school. The year after I left for college, the current principal of the high school decided to leave his position. During the search for a replacement, my former principal's resume was submitted to the board for the position. Like I said, my mother never forgets people who mess with her. Even though he was fully qualified and pretty much the top candidate, my mother convinced the rest of the board that he would be a terrible choice, and they should hire an internal candidate, a current teacher, to become the principal. Needless to say, he did not get the job. After this, he and his wife ended up moving to a new city because she had a job opportunity in a different city. Fast forward another 4 years and I graduate from college with a degree in graphic design. Like I said, I never stopped drawing. And my mother's revenge plan is not over yet. When he didn't get the job, she has still kept tabs on him. He and his wife fell right into the palm of her hand for her final act of revenge. She sends an email telling him that the boys he antagonized when he was a principal graduated with degrees, and all had jobs in their fields. She also told him she was the reason he did not get the principal job at the high school. Also said that the job that his wife has that they moved for was to work directly for my cousin, who is now her boss. 4. My mother is notorious for giving me junk. A few examples from last month. Address stamps with my information on them from when I lived at home 15 years ago. A dentist appointment card with appointments from 2006. About 30 keys, just 30 random keys without knowing where they fit. USB sticks and memory cards ranging from a few megabytes to maximum 2 gig. I love my mother, and I know she doesn't mean this in a bad way, but I have told her to stop so many times to no avail. When my father was alive, it wasn't as bad, but now I really have to be careful when I or my wife go over, or we get another box of junk to take home. She is still cleaning up the house since the death, so I understand from where it all comes, but some things are clearly meant for the bin instead of donating it to me. Last month, I really had enough and bought 200 plastic ducks online. When she was on holiday recently, I planned to take my revenge and hid them all over the house. And by everywhere, I mean everywhere. Some are very visible, like in the middle of the hall, in her washing machine, on her photo frames. But most are really hidden in places where she won't look directly, like in sculptures, between the roots of her plants, between 2 coffee cups, in the pockets of her clean trousers, between her clean folded sheets, on top of the shower head, basically in every nook and cranny of the house I could find. They are always hidden at height because she regularly babysits our toddler and I don't want him to be able to swallow them. You would think that 200 ducks is a lot, but I recently ordered a new bag because there are so many places I can still hide some. The revenge part has failed a bit because she loves it. Every time she finds one, she's laughing, and we get a photo of the found duck. The giving junk thing has been going on ever since I left my parents' house, so around 15 years, long before the death of my dad last year. And yes, I've tried everything from refusing to accept it and throwing it away in her bin. It just doesn't click for her that if she finds something, it doesn't mean that I can use it. She's told me a few times that it's junk she's giving me. The current situation is that if I don't accept it, she stores it for later, read next visit, or she takes it with her when she comes over for a visit. I've seen some people speculate on the original Reddit post that my mother is senile, a hoarder, or has problems throwing things away, but it's not like that at all, and I don't want people to think that of my mom. She is way too kind for that. My mother is a healthy, 64-year-old young, independent woman capable of throwing away stuff. She has cleaned up a lot of stuff my dad collected over the years, like books, magazines, clothes, and everything that my dad bought double, which we only found out after his passing. Everything without real sentimental value or 0% usefulness. has been thrown in the bin by her. The problem is with stuff that is between 5 and 1% usefulness. Like a commenter said, not all the sentimental stuff, we went through that last year after my dad died, but things that are virtually useless and in most cases are. Things like appointment cards from 2006, 30 random keys, vacuum bags while she knows we have a Dyson, because she bought one herself because she likes ours so much. Dried out paint bins, those plastic pots you get when you buy new plants, to name a few others. Things most people know are junk, but she somehow thinks are useful for me. Stuff that when I point it out, she knows is stupid to give me, like that appointment card from 2006. And yes, we are helping with clearing the house, whenever we can, and she wants our help, obviously. But I did post this on the Petty Revenge subreddit and not the Look at Me Helping My Mom Reddit. So I like to keep the story relevant to the revenge part. 5. My first point is, if everyone wasn't so scared of their employers, this would be nuclear revenge, but it is what it is. I had taken a job as a care support worker. It paid about £50 a week more than minimum wage, but it provided full sick pay for 6 months a year. I reckoned I could get by as long as I worked part-time as a bouncer too. So a few years down the line, they decided to attempt to remove the sick pay. They had the nerve to tell everyone they were going to lose it, but if they voluntarily relinquish it, now, they'd receive £200. I laughed at the offer. They got my deputy manager to have a chat. He sat me down and told me we were just talking as friends, and pointed out how expensive life is at the moment, and what would I do if I suddenly needed £200. I told him I'd call in sick and go and work my second job. That's something I could do for 6 months every year, so I was good, thanked him for the chat, and walked off. Now this is where it gets interesting. They then made the decision to just put an extra £200 in my paycheck. I immediately approached the area manager and double-checked she was aware of my decision over the sick pay. She confirmed it. So I suggested the £200 was obviously just a bonus and thanked her for it, in writing. My next application for sick pay wasn't paid. Now the fun really began. I had a chat with the director and told him they had some important choices to make. There were 2 outcomes. 1, apologize and reinstate my sick pay. I will continue coming to work and keep my head down. Or 2, I file a grievance, but every single time you drag me into the boardroom for it, I will throw another issue in that will cost you dearly. I will win back my sick pay, and then every year I will take 6 months off sick. I will do this until you grow balls big enough to dismiss me, and then I will really take you to the cleaners in an unfair dismissal case. The director I told was a decent guy and fully appreciated the gravity of my threat, but said he had no influence. They chose option 2. Now for a little background as to why I felt so legally safe. Every single back-to-work interview they ask the question, is there anything the company can do to improve your health? I replied with the company's inability to provide the legally mandated breaks definitely adversely affects my health. These breaks were legally mandated in order to improve the health of workers, and your refusal to provide them is a clear breach of employee law. They refused to let me write it initially. I refused to sign the paperwork and sent an email explaining why. So if they ever had the audacity to go to court, they'd have to make a case that 14-hour shifts without breaks didn't adversely affect employee health, and why they ignored so many warnings. So now on to board meeting 1. My union rep had been briefed that if another issue of illegality came up, please immediately address it. So I had my "this was part of my remuneration package, you had no legal right, etc." speech. Then I slipped in that I didn't even receive minimum wage for some of my shifts. The union rep jumped in, and long story short, from that moment forward the company owed everyone 6 years back pay for non-payment of national minimum wage for all sleep-in shifts. They were paid at a flat rate of £25 for 10 hours. The company's liability was hundreds of thousands of dollars. Amusingly, the HR rep, untrained idiot son of CEO, pulled me to one side afterwards and asked us why sleep-ins. You've established an exemption years ago and are due the least back pay of anyone. I told him it was pure malice. You financially hurt me, I hurt back. There was much discussion amongst the directors, and they made the foolish decision to call me back to the boardroom. Same again. This time I brought up that I only received a flat rate for holidays, and the law entitles me to an average working week's wage. So 6 years back pay for everyone on that too, please. That meant that everyone who did sleep-ins was owed over £25 per week's holiday, plus a share of the weekend enhancement pay taken in the last 6 years. They then officially apologized and reinstated my sick pay. I took 6 months off for stress that year. To add insult to injury, I continued working as a bouncer in their local club. Amusingly, all legal, as they found out. That meeting wasn't in the boardroom. They were learning. I pointed out that I had approached my nightclub boss, who incidentally had been given his first ever bouncing job by me many years prior, and told him of my current problems with managing stress, and he said that if I ever feel stressed, go and have a break and a cup of tea. If you can do the same. The only other legal hurdle is that you can't be paid sick and normal pay in any time period, so the schedules couldn't cross over. They didn't. I took 6 months sick the following year too. Then I couldn't be part of the appalling care they were providing, so resigned. Now the only reason this doesn't end with the charity went bankrupt and everyone was taken on by our competition and lived happily ever after is because the rest of the staff were too scared to act. I wrote a spreadsheet that calculated the back pay owed. I wrote a standard letter for folks to submit. To my knowledge, not one person submitted a claim. Now, time caught up with them anyhow. Their terrible service was eventually picked up by CQC, the governing body, and the majority of their homes closed. But the lesson to take from this is join a union and stand up for yourself. If the staff at that charity had done so, some would currently have mortgages instead of landlords today. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 376, and thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you'd like early access to the videos, get them on Monday all at once. You can do that by either supporting me on my Patreon page, where you can do that for as little as $1 or more a month, or you can become a channel member here on YouTube, where we have 3 options, one of which does give you early access to the videos. Okay, I don't think we have any other business today, so let's move along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, tagging on from story 4 there, if you were going to hide something for someone else to find in a revenge but not necessarily malicious way, like the OP in story 4 did, all done in good humor, what would you hide? I think if it was for someone I cared about ultimately and it was just a bit of fun, I'd hide little hearts, maybe that say I love you on them, so they'd be finding them for years afterward. Let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. This one comes from Revenge is Ice Cream 373 and was about, do you like pumpkin spice? And today's answer comes from Tori Mansfield. I love pumpkin spice when it is used sparingly. My favorite small drink in fall, autumn, is apple cider, but come Christmas, it's wassail. Thank you very much for your answer, Toria Mansfield. Before we go, do remember there is a new channel I have that I'm putting the news show This Week in Hell is now going up on there, as will other non-Reddit related stuff, like reviews and other things, depending on what I feel in the moment. Some of them might end up here, but I'll put a lot of them over there as well. Gives me a little more wiggle room to try things out, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.